Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat.
Hello, very good evening and a warm welcome to Newsline Prime. We are live as usual from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And on this wonderful, balmy evening, we've got what else but politics to talk about, because that seems to be the talk of town. It's not the talk of Colombo, but it's the talk all over Sri Lanka. And to discuss this better, we've got with us a political analyst, a former editor of the Daily News. I nearly said Daily Noise, but the Daily News. And he's right here in the studio with me this evening, and it is Mr. Rasika Jayakody. Hello there.
Hi.
And welcome on the program.
Thank you, Faraz.
I wanted to ask you a very straightforward question, and it is usually a yes or no, usually people say. So, Rasika, would you agree with me that in Sri Lanka we live in a democracy, or we portend to live in a democracy?
Yes, of course.
Is that so far good, because I'm right so far, yeah? All right. Well, in that case, and here's the question: if that's the case, we've both agreed that we live in a democracy. I think 16 million voters will think the same.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, why is it that these two events are happening? And I want to take one at a time. One is the matter of the United National Party. The leader of the party, who also just happens to be the Prime Minister, Mr. Wickremesinghe, there is a proposal to form a grand alliance with smaller parties. These smaller parties have got they don't even have any seats in Parliament. So actually they will they'll eat into the existing UNP vote. But leave that aside for a moment. We'll discuss that later. I'm talking about the appointment of the candidate, or the nomination of the candidate. Now, there's this long-winded way of doing it, and they want to appoint this committee and that committee. At the end of the day, Mr. Wickremesinghe, from when we read what Sujiva Sen Singh's proposed amendments are, it becomes very clear that what Mr. Wickremesinghe wanted to do was to retain for himself the right of veto, to veto who the candidate would be. Now, this is in a democracy. These parties, their constitutions have been formulated within a democracy. Then is there space in this democracy to have a little dictatorship? Because that, to me, that's what it appears, that the United National Party's leader, for whatever reason, their working committee, their parliamentary group, they're making noises now, but they have all this time, 25 years, he's been the leader of the party and led them to so many electoral defeats in all fora, on national level, provincial level, district level, you name it, he's led them to defeat. And yet, he's having this sort of totally undemocratic, almost right to choose his successor or the next candidate, the common candidate. I mean, if he's the leader of the party, he should be contesting. So there's that aspect. And the same on the other side of the political divide, we have the SLPP. We have a man who's not officially, or he doesn't acknowledge that he is a member of that party. He's certainly not the leader of that party. In fact, he sits in Parliament as the leader of the opposition, as by virtue of his membership of another party, the UPFA, if I'm not mistaken. So where is the democracy when a man like that, everybody in that party says, oh, Mahinda will say who the leader is. So why this subservience? Has democracy been reduced to subservience?
Faraz, I think your explanation makes it clear that this problem is not confined to any particular, to one party.
No,
all
it isn't.
parties across the board
Yeah.
have the same issue. There's no internal democracy in our political parties.
Yeah.
The concept of internal democracy is not embedded into the political culture, or
Yeah.
the culture that is practiced within political parties in Sri Lanka. That's the reality that we have to deal with. See, if we look at the big picture, see, if we go back to 1951, when Mr. Bandaranaike formed this LFP, I mean, he was the second in command of that government, right? He was the second in command. He was supposed to succeed Mr. D.S. Senanayake, but he realized that he's being overlooked, and Mr. D.S. Senanayake's son, Dudley Senanayake, was being groomed for the prime ministerial post. Because of that, he broke away and he formed a new party. And in that new party, for nearly 50 years, the party was run by
members of his
family, right? For nearly 50 years. That's not how a democracy functions. When he was shot dead, his wife, who practically had no experience in politics, was appointed the party leader. So this is part and parcel of our political culture. I don't want to point fingers at Mr. Wickremesinghe or Mr. Rajapaksa for behaving in this manner. We have to look at it in the larger scheme of things. There's a structural issue in Sri Lanka that needs to be resolved, that needs to be corrected. So that is the struggle I think the citizens have to embark upon.
Well, but it's almost laughable because they're arguing about who the leader is or who the candidate is going to be for various sort of reasons. On the other side, we can see today we saw the results of a court case in which the former president's chief of staff and the secretary, Gamini Senrath, and two others were acquitted. And there is wide speculation that there's wide speculation is perhaps the wrong word. There's wide amazement and wonder that this ended in a not guilty verdict, because there was wide perception created by the Yapalane bandwagon that all these in the previous regime were corrupt, and that one of the things he said they're coming to sort out the corruption. But within this whole ambience, you just think of the scenario from above. You have these two parties living in this democracy, but who are not acting democratic at all. Two individuals are going to be making a decision, and twisting the buttons here, there, and pressing that button, pressing this button, and whatever. In the meantime, the people, all down there, the people are running helter-skelter because they think they're living in a democracy, and they're not getting any democratic. I mean, they've got a leader on the one party who's actually the deputy of the International Democratic Union at one stage, and on the other side we have a person who's done a lot for the country. Nobody's arguing about that, but it's not democracy. So in between, if this was in a hospital scenario, whilst they're arguing about the doctors and which specialist and which surgeon to use and which anaesthetist and so on,
no one is looking at the patient.
Nobody's looking at the patient. The patient's dying. The patient's dying. Dying. Democracy is like dying.
Yes, so that's the biggest issue for us, because no one is focused on the patient. Patient is in dire straits. You need to perform an urgent surgery to revive the man, but everyone is debating the names of doctors. Everyone is thinking whether it's this doctor or that doctor. That's not going to solve our problem. I mean, we need to first decide the kind of surgery that we have to perform on the patient, and then select the right doctor who brings the correct skill set to perform that surgery. But no one is talking about the skill set. Skill set is the program of actions that they present to the public. This is what I'm going to do. These are the policy alternatives that I'm going to propose. That is the question for us, because people are not asking that question. I mean, now presidential election has become a farce, from tuition master to indigenous doctors to the biggest businessmen in the country. They all aspire to be the president, but no one is talking about what they are going to bring to the table, and even people are not asking the right questions.
Well, to be fair, the people haven't had the the right forum presented yet to because they've been deprived of their provincial elections in which they could have made a big statement, and this government shamelessly, and I must say absolutely shamelessly, used the likes of Faisal Mustafa, who was the Minister of Provincial Councils. He had a whole series of explanations as to why he couldn't do these things on time, including very famously or infamously when he said that there were spelling mistakes. Poor Faisal Mustafa didn't know that if you press the F7 button in a Word document, it do the spell check for you.
Faraz, I have one question. So where is the integrity now? Mr. Mustafa was a member of the SLFP and was a close advisor of President Sirisena, right? So Mr. Faisal Mustafa, he was instrumental in delaying the election. That's true. I mean, as you correctly pointed out. But then he aligned himself with the opposition, and now SLPP, which had a major issue with the delaying the elections, are now working with the SLFP or working with the likes of Mr. Mustafa. So where's the integrity? So
yes, integrity has flown out the nearest window, or out the straight out of the open door. But they've used all these things. Do you think that we will, in your view, in your analysis, do you think that there can be provincial council elections, or is that just out of the question?
I think, Faraz, at this point, I think everyone is focused on the presidential election. I think that will be the decisive point. I mean, politics is in a precarious situation, and now we need to revive this patient. Patient is dying. So provincial council election will not revive the patient. It will probably delay the presidential election due to various technical issues. So I think at this point we are 4 months away from the presidential election. The Elections Commission chairman said the election will happen before December 8th. So 4-5 months away. I think it should be the presidential election that should take place first, and then based on the outcome of the presidential election, I think either there will be parliamentary election or provincial council election. If we try too hard to push the provincial council election at this point, that will create further chaos, because that will result in
but is there a scenario where you could have the presidential election first as a planning, and then have the provincial council elections?
Yes, but what's the purpose for us? I think then after that, say if a new president comes to power, he will need a new government, he will need a functional government. So in this government, the UNP, the TNA and the JVP has a working together, they have a working majority of 121 votes. So the parliament will be dysfunctional in that case, and they'll have to negotiate an interim arrangement where how they can proceed until the next parliamentary election. So I think in that case the ideal solution would be to present a motion to parliament to dissolve a parliament and go for a parliamentary election, and after that they can think of the provincial council election. Otherwise there will be great instability in the country. Even the new president, if he comes to power, will not be able to run an effective government, and we will go back to square one.
Well, it's almost laughable, really. But can we move on to a bit of analysis and look at there is a lot of talk that the former Defence Secretary will be anointed as the candidate of the SLPP by the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is not a member of that party still. I keep saying this point because he is clearly he is not, because on paper, because he is the leader of the opposition. If he was accepted as the member of the other party, he wouldn't hold that position.
Faraz, not that he is not a member, he denied obtaining membership with the SLPP.
That's why I said officially.
Yes.
So, on paper.
So he denied. So he clearly said, he explicitly said he is not a member of the SLPP. But today Mr. Basil Rajapaksa, who is officially a member of the SLPP, said that the former president would announce the candidate on Sunday. He said he would assume the leadership on Sunday, and at the same time, there's a lot of speculation that the presidential candidate will be announced on Sunday, and I think Viatmaga Group, affiliated with the former defense secretary, I mean the platform that is actually driving his campaign, has confirmed that Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa would be the presidential candidate, and after the announcement, Mr. Rajapaksa will take part in religious ceremonies across the country. That's what Viatmaga has stated. So that means it will be technically the starting point of his campaign. Again, for us, I am confused as to why they are doing it too early, because we are 4 months away from the election. So normally, I mean, 4 months is a fairly long time in politics, as you all know. Political memory is very short-lived, right? So I mean, you can make many fatal mistakes within four months, you know, from a campaign perspective. So I'm not sure why they are pushing it too early. At the same time, if Mr. Rajapaksa assumes leadership of the SLPP, he will risk his opposition leader's position. I mean, there were media reports stating that Mr. Rajapaksa had a discussion, closed-door discussion, with President Sirisena earlier this week. So I'm not entirely sure whether the discussion revolved around his opposition lead, or his position in the opposition, or his you know, where he stands as far as the UPFA is concerned. So the discussion, I mean, what was discussed at the meeting was kept a closely guarded secret. So people are kept in the dark. However, if Mr. Rajapaksa becomes the official leader of the SLPP, as claimed by Mr. Rajapaksa, there will be another crisis in Parliament. Parliament will have to appoint a new political leader, a new opposition leader. So
why is that?
Because Mr. Rajapaksa,
if he was a member of the SLPP,
yes, but he is holding the opposition leader's post because he's a member. He was elected to Parliament
by the UPFA
on the UPFA ticket, and the General Secretary of the UPFA confirmed to the Speaker that Mr. Rajapaksa is a member of the UPFA. You can't have membership in two parties at the same time. It's either this or that. So if he officially becomes the leader of the SLPP, that means I mean, we all believe that he has to be a member of the SLPP. So he can't be the party leader without being a member.
Right.
So it's
I was trying to close my eyes and visualize this whole thing, but it's getting increasingly difficult to do that. But what do you think? What chances are there for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be the next president of this country?
Again, Faraz, as I told you, 4 months is a long period in from a campaign perspective. So if you remember, if I remember right, at the last presidential election, the common candidate of the opposition was announced approximately 8 weeks before the election. Right. So 2 months was a good period to build up some momentum, and then when it reached the peak on January 8th, when Mr. Maithripala Sirisena was elected president of the country. 4 months is a long period, relatively long period, and you can make many fatal mistakes during the campaign. For instance, we remember how Mr. Sarath Fonseca handled the situation in 2010. I mean, at the time he announced his candidacy, he was hugely popular. There's momentum going in favor of him. But during the campaign, he made several critical mistakes. He made some alarming statements, and then the tide turned against him. And then he was defeated by former President Rajapaksa with a resounding, with a resounding margin.
There's also this matter of the white flag case.
Yes. So it's a fatal mistake, right? That's what I said. So. So it's still anyone's game from what I see. I don't want to rule the UNP out, or I won't say Mr. Rajapaksa will have a cakewalk. He will.
But how could he have an? He doesn't appear to that he will have an easy time. There will be suspicions about him expressed by the minority communities, by the Tamil community, and also the Muslim voter. And the last time round, over 81% turnout in the former conflict areas. And there is a school of thought to say that had those votes, the turnout been only say 60%, then a significant chunk of votes would have ended up with the Rajapaksas, or it would have not made that much of a difference
Yes.
to them.
Yeah. So, from what we see for us, the next presidential election will be heavily polarized. Sinhala Buddhist votes and minority votes will be at two different ends of the spectrum. So that's a serious situation. That's a serious situation, I must say. At the same time, Mr. Rajapaksha or his camp haven't presented an acceptable program of actions that will earn the support. You have to earn their support, earn the support of the minorities or the minority parties. So they are trying to, from what I see, they are trying to bank on the Sinhala Buddhist votes, rural votes.
But they need what? They need about 75%, right?
Yes, so they think with strong policies on national security and with strong support from Buddhist monks and Buddhist temples, they think they can get at least about 70% of the Sinhala Buddhist votes, but still.
But Rasika, do you think that they are missing the woods for the trees? And by doing all this, are they forgetting that there's a group of people in the north, in the former conflict areas, who probably won't vote for him, and they came out, they turned out by in force 81% at the last presidential elections, and if they repeat that all over again this time round, in order to keep away what they perceive to be not their candidate, then there's the Gotabaya Rajapaksa candidacy is going to run into hot water.
I'm completely in agreement with you, because they are not working out a proper strategy to address that problem, or they are not perceiving it as a problem. So that's the thing. So that's where the UNP can capitalize on. On the other side, UNP needs to have a clear strategy as to how they can capitalize
But
on
the UNP leadership's only strategy seems to be, I want to hang on to power.
Well, it's like this for us now. The UNP has to decide. UNP as a party has to decide how they want to go about this election.
Because, but clearly they didn't do that before getting into bed with the SLFP in 2015, and they didn't have any sort of strategy. They just went and started occupying offices, and then just everybody did what they wanted to.
That's true. Now, for instance, when President Sirisena contested the election in 2014, November 2014, he said he promised to be a non-partisan president. That's what he said. He will not align himself with any party, but he will do the right thing. So people voted for him to do the right thing, be at the helm and do the right thing. But 2 weeks after the election, he became the leader of the SLFP, and there was no discussion about that during the election period, and the UNP had no. Interestingly, when President Sirisena did that, the UNP didn't have a problem. The UNP didn't raise an alarm. That's the real issue. And then the UNP got into this national government, which backfired on October 26th after 3.5 years. So this is the problem in Sri Lanka. I think for us, political parties do not represent the political aspirations of their people, of their supporters, or those who vote for them.
Yeah.
And then political parties at the decision-making level, they do whatever they want. They make whatever the decisions they want to make, and then they expect the party supporters to fall in line or fall by the wayside. So, this is why we feel a serious sense of frustration among the public, that they say, we don't need any political party.
But surely we're told that these figures come out at about 2 million new voters. I presume that the new voters would mean younger voters.
Yes.
And surely the younger citizen of our country is far more better empowered now than his parents before him and his grandparents before that, and so they've got access to the news. They know how to circumvent the the networks when they're shut down in Facebook and social media. They know how to do. They know all about VPNs and all sorts of things, and so they know their news. And they also know with all these latest developments with online banking and all sorts of things, they also know that there is a nice life out there, but for that nice life they need to get a job. And when they become aware of endemic corruption in our country, they know that all this does is to impact on the quality of their opportunity, or the number or the availability of opportunity for the young people to get jobs and to get on with life.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are young people who sit here and wonder in amazement at the size of the IT market in Bangalore. And they must be thinking, hey, why can't we do that here? But and then they'll realize that the politicians haven't delivered absolutely anything of any concrete proposals, nothing. There are no big businesses that have arrived in Sri Lanka. We had Volkswagen, but not Volkswagen.
Yeah.
You know, and so on. And these were all complete and utter tosh, absolute rubbish. We have a foreign minister who's sitting there. I don't know what he's doing. There are bombs and killings, shootings, mass shootings happening in all over the United States, and he's like a little Persian cat seated there, not doing anything about it. And he ought to. He ought to send them, at least consider sending them a travel advisory. Amnesty International have done that. So where is our democracy headed, Rasika?
Faraz, so what you pointed out is, clearly shows the institutional breakdown in Sri Lanka. Our institutions don't function. That is the fundamental problem with our democracy, and that's what that needs to be corrected. So the elections should be used as a platform to exert pressure on our politicians to revive our institutional framework. That's the real problem. I mean, it's not a problem with the foreign minister or any other individual. It's a system that doesn't work. It's a system that has been paralyzed, right? So,
but what's made it paralyzed?
I mean, multiple issues. For us, I think a critical point is 1977, because in 1977 we had a hugely powerful government that could do anything. And President Jayawardena said he could. I mean, he can't turn a man. He couldn't turn a man into a woman or a woman into a man, but apart from that, he could do anything else.
And he was right.
He was right. So that's a problem. And after that, there was a severe deterioration in every aspect of our society. If you take the state sector, if you take the private sector, if you take our value system, if you take our families, if you take the way we interact with society. So this is severe deterioration that we see. So now it's not the time to examine where we went wrong. So we need to now see how we can get it right, how we can get the formula right. But that discussion is not happening in our political sphere. So on our election, people are focused, as I said, people are focused on getting this person into power or that person into power, which will not solve any of our problems. We need to get the right system into power, those who present the right solutions into power. So that's where we have gone wrong. I mean, that's the responsibility of all of us.
But all of us can only be empowered to do that if the political parties put out the right candidate.
For us, I think it's the other way around. Political parties or politicians are the self-serving breed. They respond only to pressure. So the pressure has to be exerted by citizens. There's a difference between the term citizens and people. So people will not care about anything. People are gullible. People can be led down the garden path. But citizens are socially conscious. They have a strong sense of social consciousness. So they are driven by that feeling. So citizens have to exert pressure on policymakers, on political parties to present the right solutions, to talk about the right things without being embroiled in their own battles over petty issues or over trivial matters. So that's why I repeatedly say that citizens have to step up. The answer lies with the citizens, not with the people.
So the citizens are the people who care, and they must get out of their do-nothing seat, and they must become proactive, and they must seize this opportunity to vote for the person whom they believe will actually deliver
Will
for
bring
them.
the right solution to the table.
Right.
Will bring the right, and to make sure that the right solution is there, right solutions are discussed on political platforms, not trivial matters or not promises or not empty promises or any other
And including like bringing rice from the moon.
or that sort of stuff.
Right. Well, Rasika Jayakody, thank you very much for that interesting analysis. Thank you. We look forward to welcoming you on our network another time. And all eyes, I suppose, on Sunday when this so-called announcement is going to be made. Let's see. Let's see how the cookie crumbles. On that note, take care. Have a wonderful evening ahead of you. And of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.